Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, I want to take a look at the massive Age of Empires 2 update that just came out today. Overall, I'd say this patch has two main themes. The first is that it's going to be significantly harder to wall open maps early on, making them more aggressive than ever. And second is infantry unique units in Castle Age are in many cases going to be much better than they were before. We'll start off with the general changes that impact all civilizations though. To begin with, houses are now going to have lower melee armor, and in fact negative melee armor in Dark Age and Feudal. Effectively, all melee units will now deal 2 more damage against houses in the early game. Once you're in Imperial Age though, there isn't any change, so this is just going to make it easier to break through someone's initial house walls. To put it in perspective, a feudal man-at-arms will now do 9 damage instead of 7, reducing the number of attacks needed against a house by 24. Arguably even more impactful though is scouts now do 50% more damage to houses in Feudal Age before factoring in blacksmith upgrades. At this point, with 3 men-at-arms or 5 scouts, you can actually bring down a house faster than one villager can repair it in Feudal, though in either case that still takes several minutes to do. As a complementary change, palisade walls had their cost increased from 2 to 3 wood per segment, with palisade gates remaining the same at 30 wood each. Remember, after relatively recent changes, palisades are also slower to build and have no armor while they're being constructed, so generally early walling is becoming more costly while also less effective than ever. This is all part of an ongoing push toward more aggression on open maps, and while I don't think early walling with houses and palisades is ever going away entirely, my speculation is we could see less full palisade walling and more walling individual resources to save cost. The conversion resistance of scouts and eco-warriors was also changed a bit behind the scenes, which I assume was to smooth out the especially quick or long conversions that could happen with those units. But now let's move on to civilization-specific balance changes, starting with the massive overhaul to Castle Age infantry unique units. This is obviously in response to all of the long swordsman buffs over the last little while, which have made Castle Age infantry unique units less appealing in contrast. We'll do all of them at once because it really is quite a bit to take in, and it's more of the overall trend that I want to highlight. I'll also be using percentages for these to hopefully make it a bit more digestible than a bunch of raw stats. For Aztecs, their non-elite Jaguar warriors are going to gain 30% more HP. The Celts, non-elite Wold Raider, are going to have their attack increased by 25%. The Ethiopian Shotel warriors have 13% more HP. Inca non-elite Kamyuks have 1 more melee armor and 17% more HP. Japanese non-elite Samurai have 25% higher attack and 17% more HP. Malian non-elite Gebeto have 17% more HP. The Poles Obu train in 12 seconds now instead of 9, so that one's actually a nerf. Non-elite Teutonic Knights have 17% higher attack and 2 more melee armor, bringing them now to 7 melee armor in Castle Age, and Viking non-elite Berserks have 33% higher attack, 1 more melee armor, 2 seconds off their creation time, and their infantry HP bonus now gives its full 20% starting in Feudal Age. You can see it's just a massive boost across the board to infantry unique units, whether it be HP, attack, or armor. Now this brings up the issue of the elite versions though, which haven't been changed. To offset the fact that the elite versions are now giving a relatively smaller boost, some of the costs have also been reduced, including the elite Shotel warrior, elite samurai, elite Teutonic Knight, and elite Berserk, all of which are several hundred resources cheaper to upgrade than they were before. The end result is that the elite versions end up with the same balance they had previously, but the Castle Age versions now stand out compared to the Long Swordsman as more expensive but stronger alternatives. Now there are a few notable infantry exceptions here, like the Huskarl, Throwing Axeman, and Karambit Warrior, which I don't think were forgotten. If anything, it shows that devs are putting thought into which infantry needed buffs and which don't on an individual basis. Personally, I think the rise of infantry really brings a new dimension to the game, as where archers and cavalry are better at raiding villagers, infantry pose an extra threat to buildings thanks to some hidden bonus damage. So that's infantry, but now let's take a look at the non-infantry related balance changes. The first is just a small nerf to Bohemians, whose Hussite wagon was slowed from 0.85 tiles per second to 0.8. That shouldn't impact Bohemians very much, given they tend to have a fairly slow army composition in general, between hand cannons, pikes, monks, siege, etc. Next, the Burmese Imperial Age unique tech Manipur Cavalry now gives cavalry plus 5 damage against archers, whereas previously it was plus 6 against buildings. It also no longer applies to a Rambai, which is automatically a nerf to that unit, but makes Burmese cavalry overall a little bit more interesting. For example, with this tech, Hussar and Cavalier take out Arbalesters in 1 less hit each. The tech gives them a bit of an anti-archer flavor, and Burmese Hussars actually take out skirmishers in 3 instead of 5 hits, which is a pretty significant change in the late game. This is on top of having a ton of armor on their battle elephants as well. Given this is an Imperial Age tech though, I don't think it's going to radically change them in 1v1s, but in team games this feels like it has the potential to be quite strong. Next up, for the Byzantines, their team bonus was improved, so their monks now heal 100% faster than standard monks as opposed to 50% faster. I've looked at this in the past, and healing with monks is generally a bit underwhelming, especially mid-battle. You typically get better results by prioritizing conversions, but every now and then if the opportunity presents itself, it never hurts to heal units, and Byzantines certainly have expensive units worth preserving. Next, a small change to Cumans is their stables and archery ranges now cost -75 wood each, whereas previously it was -100. I did initially have to do a double take on this bonus in October, as -100 wood per building is a big savings in Feudal Age. I'm not too surprised to see this tweaked a bit, and I think it's still a really fun and interesting bonus that gives the civilization a much better identity than just the feudal booming civ. Another change was to the Poles, who now gain siege engineers. With siege ram benefiting from more damage against buildings and onager and bombard cannon gaining an extra range, this is a very useful tech for Poles. It offsets their nerf to the obu training time, which I think is fair compensation. And finally, the one that actually stuck out to me the most is that Vikings are going to be losing thumb ring. This is part of a trend where I think they're trying to pivot Vikings from a predominantly archer civilization into more of an infantry one, which technically they have been labeled as this whole time. Remember, to offset this, their infantry HP bonus was improved and their berserk was improved more than many of the other Castle Age infantry unique units. Reflexively, I don't like the loss of thumb ring, as I've gotten used to the idea of Vikings as the wheelbarrow and arbalest civ, but with the new push the devs have toward getting more infantry into the game, I think the Vikings make a lot of sense as a civ to target for that. For team games, I expect Vikings are going to fall off a bit in popularity, as they're typically picked as an archer civ. But for 1v1s where you often see more infantry, I wouldn't be surprised if Vikings come out just fine after the new changes. Even without thumb ring, you could still make arbalest, and in my opinion, it just feels a bit less automatic, but is still a viable choice. So that's all of these civilization balance changes, but there was also a handful of UI additions and new features that also look great, and personally I'm even more excited for. The first change is that now if you move your mouse over your civilization icon, you get a snapshot of your civilization bonuses, what you've researched, and what's still available. With 39 civilizations in the game now, this is a great feature, as they can be pretty overwhelming. Another nice inclusion is unique skins for trade cards now from different regions, where previously we only had the unique one for the American civs. While I wouldn't advocate for alternate skins for every type of unit, for something as easily identifiable as a trade card, this is a great idea and gives the game a bit of extra depth. Another inclusion in the patch is the new handicap system. I've already done a video going through all of the ways this works and why I think they've done it in a very clever way. It's a lot more than just a resource multiplier and also gives more HP on villagers, more starting resources, more building HP, faster working military buildings, and extra bonus damage. It's well thought out, and even a 5% handicap boost is significant, with the full 200% handicap being completely ridiculous. You can only enable this in single player or unranked lobbies, but I see a lot of potential for this one to help friends with very different skill levels have more competitive and rewarding games. Also, a new addition for quick play is that the unranked matchmaking system is going to have an option to play against the AI. It seems to me like this is another really nice inclusion for casual players, and in fact a good portion of the unranked lobby games are usually comp stomps against the AI, and this just helps those games get started more easily. My only worry is people used to setting up games in the unranked lobby won't end up finding this option, or because of limited map bans, you might have players dropping if they don't get Black Forest, which is by far the most popular map for unranked games against the computer. I'm curious to see how this turns out, as I probably would have made it Black Forest only, but I still think it could be a great addition. Also, while I'm on the topic of maps, I should point out a few that have had a bit of an overhaul. Arabia, for instance, has been revamped once again, this time using the popular King of the Desert Arabia generation. This means you'll always have a desert map with some decent woodlines, a starting sheep you already control, and some close berries and gold. It's still quite an open map, but has the odd pond and neutral camels, which add a bit of character. Notice you always start with elephants or rhinos, which carry 60 more food than boar, but are more effective at chasing down your villagers, adding a bit of extra danger. And finally, they've also added 2 additional campaigns for the co-op mode, which is something I still haven't tried, but it's nice to see that they're keeping up with that. So that's the big November patch, which you can see included quite a lot of changes. I'm mostly looking forward to using more samurai and berserks, but this patch really feels like it has something for everyone. That's all for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.